Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do for our apron is I'm going to pin my pattern to my apron. I'm going to start right down here at the fold. And it's okay if you're a little bit wide or shy. This is a very forgiving apron. One size fits most, and I'm still trying to find the source of my apron pattern. I thought I had found it, but the page is not found. There are tons of different infinity apron patterns out there, and I am trying to find the one that's closest to this one. But you could use almost any of them as this same pattern. Excuse me. And I'm just literally pinning them here. Now, you may not be able to see it on camera, but there are a couple of notes on here. This one says add 2 inches. If I can't get the full 2 inches out of my 2 yards of fabric here, then I will take a little bit of this fabric and just add it to that end. But that's what I'm trying to avoid having to do if I can. But I have plenty of fabric, as you can see. We'll have lots of fabric that we cut out of here. And I showed you the 2 fabrics earlier, and I have 2 layers here. If worse comes to worse, I can always take some of the extra from the bottom fabric, which is that really pretty pink, and add it in as extra on the ends or whatever. And I'm doing a good bit of pinning because I just don't want anything to shift around when I start cutting. Don't want to pin myself. And as I've said before, this is my favorite kind of apron. It's great for people who have, like me, have shoulder issues or other things going on. Arthritis. It doesn't pull on your neck. I'm not worried about that being right there at the selvage, because when I go around to sew it, it will hide it. And I'm only making a one layer apron. If I could talk, I'd be dangerous. And the reason I'm only making a 1 layer apron is because I don't like how hot 2 layer aprons get. And this is going to be done on the serger. It's going to be fine. Alright, so now that I've got it pinned, I'm going to start cutting. And you can see I've got extra pattern there. But I'm not worried about that either, because I'm going to take some of this fabric that I'm cutting out of here right now, and I am going to add it to the ends of that, so that will make up the difference. And I will start cutting at the end of the fabric here. Sorry if my arm is in the way. Just trying to make sure that I follow this. Now, if you prefer, you can cut this with a rotary cutter. I just don't have a cutting mat on here today, and I don't really have a cutting mat that's big enough for this. So if I have a little bit of jagged edges, I'm not going to knock myself out about it. Once again, I'm going to start cutting at the end. only cut one layer there. I did. So let's go back and cut the other. If you make mistakes when you're doing things, just wing it. For most things, it's not critical. And if it is, you're probably not sewing. So I'm just putting my extra fabric down there. And then I'm going to bring this part up here. And I'm going to start cutting. This time I am making sure that I'm going through both layers. A little bit off, but it's not going to show in my final product. Okay, so before I take my pattern off of here, I'm going to check and see what I've got, and this is the fabric I have left over. So I have plenty to do basically anything I want with it. So that's probably 2 inches right there. So I'm just going to make it so I don't have a big wide angle there. Get rid of those 2 little pieces. And then over here, my note says add 4 inches, and I'm already covered in thread, of course. You can see I serged my 2 pieces of fabric together earlier. And it's add 4 inches. I'm using up my scraps, obviously. Make sure I've got enough there to match that up. And then do another 4 inches. It's all by eye and by ear. Those who've been sewing a while know this. Alright. So I'm going to pin through the pattern and all 4 layers of fabric right here. That should give me my 4 inches. fold my pattern itself back out of the way. And then I'm going to attach my newly cut pieces to the pieces of the pattern that they're go to. How do you like that? I even got them the right matching fabrics. The original pattern that I saw for this called for 1.25 yards, and I obviously had 2 yards, but I have lots and lots left over. Now I'm going to sew these 2 pieces onto the pattern piece, but I still have one more thing that I have to cut. And here's my original paper pattern, and nowhere on my original paper pattern is there a name of a designer. So if you design patterns, it would be nice if you put your brand on every piece. And then this is my pocket pattern. I'm going to lay it on here, and I'm just deciding if I want my pocket to be solid or if I want it to be 2 colors. I do know that I want it to run this way. I'm going to fold that fabric in half. Yeah, just like that. This also needs to be sewn onto the pattern or onto the main fabric before we start putting everything together. That pin needs a vacation, so we'll give it a vacation. It can go bye-bye. What do you think of that? You may notice I'm cutting just a little bit outside of the top of this pattern and around the side. The reason I'm doing that is so that I can fold that over and create myself a little hem to sew against my apron. I've tried putting these on these aprons as double pockets, and they always seem to not work well for me in the long run. What I do instead is I make a fold over hem at the edges, just on the sewing machine. And then when I sew it down, I'm going to probably put a couple of stitches down the front of the pocket, and those stitches will allow me to hold my cell phone and shove a towel or whatever else that I'm carrying around in my pocket. Okay, so next stop, and I want to mark this before I forget that it's the pocket for the infinity apron. You guys who've been here a while probably recognize this fabric. I bought a whole bolt of it, and I've been using it for background fabric and a little bit of everything else. So now we're going to go over to the sewing machine. So here we are at the sewing machine, and we are going to first put these 2 pieces on. I want to make sure the needle is up so I don't hit it, or the pen, I mean. Gotta find the foot pedal. I am gonna back stitch these. just for my own peace of mind. Here's the other one. Again, the pin is up, and I am back stitching. And then the last thing before we take the pattern off, completely, is I am going to move my pins that show me where the top and bottom of my pattern are supposed to go into the front of the fabric, so they show me that. Then the rest of the pins can come out. Now, one thing I do advise you to do, especially if you've never made this pattern before, is to put the apron on and see where you like the pockets, because they don't always land in places that are comfortable. If you're pregnant, if you have a larger stomach like I do, if you are, in any way disabled, it might be more comfortable for you to wear the pocket higher or lower, or even to leave the pocket off completely. And there's my pattern. I'm going to take it over here and just set it aside. And remember, I put the 2 pins in. There and there. You may not be able to see them on the fabric at this point, but they're there. I'm going to, and you can use an iron for this. You can do it by hand, by eye, however you like to do it. I'm going to fold over the top edge of my pocket, roughly 1/4 of an inch. There's a little curvy in it, so I want to get that curve out. And I have clips sitting right here. So I'm going to put a clip on the top in a couple of places, just so nothing moves. And then I'm going to do almost the same thing with my sides, except I'm going to kind of fold my side edges over and then catch them in that top clip. It won't show. And I'm not worried about rolling these over, because they're not getting sewn until I go to put it on the apron itself. As much as my shoulder hurts, why do I keep putting things on top of the machine? I don't know. Maybe you guys can answer that for me. Guys, I watched The Lovely Lady earlier this week, and She's from, well, she's from North Carolina, but she sounds like she's from Kentucky. And I was listening to her talk, and I was, like, transported back to childhood because she sounds just like my granny. And she made the prettiest quilt. It's called an envelope quilt, and I will put a link to her down in the description because I just thought that was the cutest quilt I had ever seen. And this lady just made it up out of her head and then sewed it like it was nothing. I was like, okay, you sound like my hillbilly relatives, but boy, that was a pretty quilt. And she quilted it in like 16 minutes. I mean, it was straight line quilting, but it was so cute. I still don't have my voice back all the way, as you can tell. Alright, so we're going over here. I'm going to tuck that under because that's where I want it. And then I'm going to sew my top of my pocket down. Yes, I'm sewing it from the back side. I will put pretty on the front. Well, if my machine decides it wants to sew with me today. Let's start a little bit forward and then we'll go backwards. There we go. Now, you could fancy up one of these aprons any way you wanted to. I have put embroidery on them before. I have put names on them before because I've made quite a few of them as gifts. You could put a ruffle around the edge. I'm going to caution you about the ruffle around the edge real quick though. This is what's called a Mobius apron. And I don't know if any of y'all know what Mobius means, but basically it is a never-ending circle. And you will see that when we get ready to do the put together of this and doing the outside edge. You will see that. Alright. Which basically means you never lift your needle. That's why I'm going to do it on the Serger, because that just works perfectly for me. Now those pins are pretty close to the center of this. So even if my pocket isn't completely centered, I don't mind. If I were making it for a gift, I would be way more kerfluffled about that. And I would say that the lady reminds me of my granny at Poor Man's Sewing, but quite honestly, she's probably my age or similar. Very close to the same age I am, so that would be cheeky of me to say anything like that. But her voice sure reminds me of my family. I'm hoping I can say that without sounding cheeky. And I want you guys to notice that I did something dumb. I put every one of my little clips on upside down. It works better if you put them with the flat side down on your table. Take that pin out. Don't sew over your pins. I just put it in the wrong box, but I'll fix that afterwards. There are quite a few people that I follow and have followed for years, but this lady at Poor Man's Sewing is new to me. I think she's a fairly new channel. And I am impressed. She calls her machines Granny and Granny's sister, which I don't know if that's who she inherited the machines from, or if that's just what she calls them. But I really think that's cute. Alright, and the Jazz does not have a thread cutter, so I have to cut it by hand. And now that my pocket is on, the pin's in the right places. Measuring for my phone. And there is no such thing as, oh yeah, just make the pocket 5 inches wide. That's not how this works. Find the bobbin thread. Alright. There's one last thing that we have to do on the sewing machine. Hello, where did you come from? One of the reasons, come back over here and look at me. Howdy. One of the reasons that I made this so that there were two colors is so you can see what I'm about to do. Now this is the front of my apron. And here's the strap on the left. We need to match the strap on the left with the strap on the right. And this is why I wasn't super crazy concerned about the ends of the straps. So what I've done is I've turned them both so that they are face to face, and then I always get mixed up at this part. Then we've got to take the strap on the right. Where did you go? And we've got to match it with the strap over here. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to put it on and make sure I've done my straps right. Because if you don't, your apron is not going to be wearable. I'm getting poked by a pen. And I've added enough room to mine. Whoops, other side, Melissa. that it goes around me and it meets. And then I like aprons big, so there's my apron. And now I'm going to take it off. And I'm going to leave those pins in. We're going to go back down to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew my straps together the way that I have them joined. So let's go back to the sewing machine. I put my pins. Once again, I am going to back stitch at both ends. I'm back stitching pretty thoroughly there, just to make sure that everything's good. And we're going to come over here and we're going to do this one. Same thing, back stitch at both ends. Now we get to do the fun part. The next part is doing the loop all the way around our machine with a serger. I will bring you back for that in just a minute. I need to get things rearranged and set up. Alright, I'm sorry you get my back to the camera, but it was the best recording angle I could find for you to be able to see the serger. So here's what we've got. This is our apron. I'm going to start at the bottom a little bit off center so that my fold over or my edge, whenever I get back to it, doesn't show too badly. So what I'm going to do, I have my serger set on neutral B, 7.5 for the short stitch, and I'm going to go down to 2. I was at 2.5, but I'm going to go down to 2. And the goal here with the serger is not to cut off lots of stuff at the edge. I'm just going around the edge and putting a hem on it. So I'm not going to try to talk while I'm serging. I'll just go ahead and get this done.